Have you ever seen that movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? I'd love a machine like that, wouldn't you? Hey, honey, I've shrunk my belly. Hey, honey, I've shrunk the mortgage. Ever since the dawn of time, people have tried to shrink God down to a set of rosary beads, a picture you can hang on a wall, a figurine you can put on a mantelpiece, or even a church building.
Is that where God lives?
He's smaller than we thought. But God is the most unshrinkable person in the universe. He's bigger, he's greater, he's more powerful than all those fears that want to be the boss of you. And that night on the boat, those disciples discovered that for the first time. No wonder they were so afraid. So I have a question for you from this storm story. Have you ever admitted that you need a God who can drive out fear in your life? The only thing the disciples did right that night on the boat was to admit they needed God to step into their circumstances. Are you at that point where you're ready to admit that you need God? See, I think some of you are. I think you're becoming more and more convinced of your need for God to help you beat your fear. Maybe a couple of months ago, the thought of even thinking about God or spiritual things would have just made you laugh. But now, even in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, now God's back on your radar. You feel like it's almost as if God is ambushing you. He's fast becoming the God who's just so hard to resist. Jesus said to those disciples that night on the boat, "Why are you so afraid?" Even though they'd walked with him and talked with him for years, they really didn't grasp who he actually was or how powerful he really was. God is a safe place to hide, ready to help when we need him. So we stand fearless at the cliff edge of doom, courageous in sea storm and earthquake. Not only does the psalmist say that God is a safe place to hide and that he's ready to help us, but he says we can stand fearless. Why? Because everything's sorted now? No. I'm standing on the cliff edge of doom. The storms are rising. There's still a pandemic. But I'm deciding not to let fear be the boss of me. Why? Because God is my safe place to hide. He's ready to help when I need him. In other words, God is bigger than those fears that want to control me.
Duncan, this has been so helpful. What would you say to people whose fears are keeping them up at night?
Maybe a good first step is to identify exactly what that fear is that's stealing your sleep at night. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's your job. Maybe you're afraid that you aren't meeting expectations. Or maybe you're just afraid that you're not going to have a job to go back to when all this is blown over. Listen to me. God is your safe place, ready to help. And maybe for you, it's an addiction. And it's been crippling you and you've been trying to shake it and get it sorted for years, but you haven't managed to muster up the courage to share it with someone else. Listen to me, God is a safe place. He's ready to help. Maybe for you, your fear involves your family or your marriage, and you're afraid of the mess it's going to create if you face this thing. God is your safe place. He's ready to help. Telling fear, "You're not the boss of me," is possible. But it's going to take a courageous next step. So if the storms are rattling your boat right now, please don't shrink God down. Accept his invitation to follow him and to fear not, even if there's something to be afraid of. Tell fear, "You're not the boss of me, because I already have a boss of me, and he conquered death, and he is bigger than all my fears."